I guess you got to hold this up close. Good morning again. Welcome to the April Cash membership meeting.
I can't find an umbrella. It's supposed to rain. I never checked the weather.
Okay, first-time attendees. I'm trying to get the mic right, so I apologize. First-time attendees, if there is anybody here that is attending a Cash membership meeting for the first time, we'd like to recognize you, embarrass you a little bit. There's one that's willing. Can you stand up and say your name and who you represent? Great. Welcome, and hopefully you'll become a member of Cash again. Oh, you are? All right, great. Thank you for being here. Anybody else that's new to Cash attending the meeting this morning? Okay, we're gonna jump right in. Want to let everybody know we're broadcasting this meeting live, so thank you to those that are in attendance online. I'm gonna go right to the first advertisement, if you will. April workshops that are happening this month, actually this week, tomorrow, and then this Friday. Tomorrow's is in Sacramento. Friday's is in Ontario. The topic is planning and executing successful summer projects. And I'd have to say the experts are going to be working on this and talking about this, have made those, used to be 3 months. We always think of a summer as 3 months. It's not that way anymore in schools. You're lucky if it's, 2, maybe 2 in a week. And so there's a fine art that designers, construction people in school districts have made in getting projects done in that slim window of time. So I think a lot of techniques you'll learn from those workshops this week. So please attend if that's an interest of yours. The next thing we want to advertise is the Next Gen Spring Symposium is coming up May 16th and 17th in Sacramento. We're going to tour a school that is right in town here, so that ought to be fun, and then we're going to have a series of meetings the next day. And you know how sometimes when you try to pick a title to describe something, it doesn't always go quite right? But when I think of what the vision is for this symposium, reshaping the physical school environment to accelerate student learning and engagement, I couldn't think, Jenny, whoever came up with that title, I'm going to give you credit. That is perfect. I mean, that's what this is about, is how do we, engage in designing a physical environment that does those two things. And, I think all of you know this, that student engagement is a key to student learning. You usually don't have student learning without engagement. So that's a great title. I think it's really great that we're doing this, but also I want to remind people, invite your educators. If you're a facility practitioner in a school district and you're designing a new school, and you're probably working with a few of the educational staff, that's a great time to invite them. And if you're working on a modernization with a principal, and their staff, that's a great event to invite them to engage educators that are in the classroom every day and trying to run schools with design professionals and with facility practitioners is one of the main intents of these activities. The fall conference and pre-conference workshop, October 18th to 20th. You can get signed up now. Duke Hotel in Newport Beach. So save the date for the fall conference and get signed up now. I didn't accelerate. There it is. So those people can see it right there. The next thing I wanted to remind you about is we have a Cash Weekly update email. So check your inbox. I think there's some value information. There's the summary of the latest news that's happening, Prop 51 information, different events, conferences. So it's a great opportunity to stay up to date with Cash if you're checking your email. And we're going to move right into state agency updates. So is our representative from DSA present right now? Great. And I apologize if you can introduce yourself when you come up, and then we'll meet afterwards. Thanks for being here today.
Okay. Can you hear me okay? Real close. How's that? Any better? I'll project. How's that? All right. Well, let's start off with a good morning to you all from State Architect's office. My name is Kurt Kooknick. I am the new deputy to the State Architect. I took the position the 21st of February. Put me in perfect time to go to the CASH conference, which I've been to multiple times before. In my previous life, I was a lobbyist for the American Institute of Architects California Council. So 21 years doing that, 21 years working with CASH. I'm no kid in any regard, but I do have a clear understanding of CASH's role, of the DSA's role. But I have to tell you, my perspective now on the inside is completely different than it was on the outside. Every organization looks different on the inside than it does on the outside. And I'm quite pleased, actually, by much of what I see. There's some incredibly dedicated and hardworking staff at the DSA, at the 4 regional offices, and it's really been a pleasure of mine to work with these folks so far and get to know them and also have their support. We do have a couple of rogues that, as Chet likes to call them, every family has its black sheep, right? And if yours doesn't, you're probably it. So, anyway, that's really enough about me. I'm happy to be there. I'm glad to be working under Chet. My role, as I see it, is actually one of a chief of staff. I want to allow Chet the ability to work on the focus while I work on this broader image and what we can do as a whole with DSA, with everything that the DSA does. So let's jump right into it. One of the first things I learned about the DSA is that they have to take all comers. They really don't have much of a choice. So whether you're a Lionakis or a WLC or an HMC as an architectural firm, or an LAUSD or a San Diego or a small district up in rural Northern California, the DSA has to take all those folks. And a consequence of that is that oftentimes the rural district that doesn't do a lot of projects is hiring an architect out of Rotary. And that individual can get ahead of the large projects, the large districts. They deserve as much time and attention, and but it does tend to slow the process up. So we're looking at how do we create a process wherein we can help these folks, not only just help them through the DSA process, but also educate the district, educate the architect, so we end up with a brighter client and a brighter client's rep, because the district is our client. And so we're looking at a number of things now that we'd like to do with outreach and education, warming back up the DSA Academy so that we can help those districts and help those architects, because someone who's standing in line and doesn't know the process holds up the process for everyone. So we're looking at how we can improve that. The other thing I learned is there's a lot of urban legend and folklore out there. I'm still hearing about 8-month bin times, which is so far from the truth that it really mystifies me. Even on the outside at AIA, I knew it was 7 months. So. And then the other thing I learned about coming from an association and being a lobbyist for them, I knew about bureaucracy. I just didn't realize it was a living organism, and bringing about change is very difficult. And what I'm seeing is that you can bring about change, but it has to be very incremental, because people have to be comfortable with it if you're going to get their full participation. So it's been quite an experience thus so far doing that with people. So now let's get into the meat of the matter. The bond money is what keeps me up at night. As I look around the DSA and see where we're poised for this influx of work, which, depending on who you speak with, it could be a tidal wave, or it could be a tsunami, or it could be something low tide. But regardless of what it is, we need to be ready. I don't want to find ourselves ever in a position to have to respond, what did you know, when did you know, what did you do about it, and we didn't have any answer for that. So some of the things we're looking at doing is looking around the organization and getting ready and being prepared. One of the things that astounds me is that Our project inspector and our project engineer program is woefully inadequate right now. We've got 26 field engineers for the entire state. It concerns me, and we have an attrition factor on our field inspectors that also concerns me. So this Wednesday, you may be one of the invited, your district may be one of the invited, your firm might have been one of the invited. We're doing a task force for project inspection, and we're looking at everything we can do with the existing program to make it a greater success, encourage more people to go into it, and never compromise the safety component. One of the first things I learned when I started digging into the project inspector program and the attrition issue is that the way they do the exam is 5 sections, you take them all at once. If you fail one, you failed the whole thing. That's absolutely ridiculous to me. The architect's registration exam, you take them one at a time or all at a time. Whatever you pass, you pass. Whatever you fail, you come back and retake. So that's an excellent model. Ugh, why didn't I think of that? So that's what we're going to do with that moving forward. There's a lot of other low-hanging fruit that we're going to be looking at for how we can improve in that project inspector program and elsewhere. One of the other things I hope you appreciate is that our IT organization within DGS, which is called ETS, no longer supports our field engineers on their iPads. We're all going to Surface Pros. Unfortunately, the Surface Pros don't work for the field engineers. And so what we've done is got an exception where they can continue to use the iPad through the summer crush so that we don't upset workflow, and in the interim look for a viable alternative to the iPad for them to be doing their field work. And so it's nice that ETS is accommodating, but it's very easy when you explain to them, look, we have a client to serve, we've got needs, and if we upset the balance, you're going to hear about it. We'll hear about it, then you'll hear about it. So why don't we head all these problems off at the pass? Because in the life of every problem, it's big enough to see and small enough to solve, right? So that's what we're trying to do now. So we're trying to get ahead of all the things that concern us because of the summer crush. But the other one is that Chet constantly hammers is escalation. I don't know if you've heard him speak to this, but he absolutely hates wasting money. It drives him up a wall. And so the numbers people use are 5%. The fact of the matter, if you talk to McGraw-Hill, the real number out there is 8%. So 8% on $1,080,000. You do the times delta multiplier on how long that's going to extend, but that's just to give you an example of what delay costs us and what delay, that's up in the air. That's just interest. That's not getting us more facility. And so we want to be sensitive to that, and we want to do everything we can to be responsive to the districts. It's not something that Chet takes lightly, and it's not something he's going to allow for any of the regional offices or headquarters to avoid. It's something that he constantly hammers on at every all-staff and senior staff meeting. And I think that's pretty wonderful to have someone in a state organization be sensitive and responsive to those kinds of concerns. The big measure for DSA has always been bin time. Bin time, what's your bin time? Right now, the median bin time is 4.5 weeks. That's the median bin time right now, okay? How are we doing that? We've got 22 contracts that we've let for outside plan review. It's helped immensely. Is it the long-term solution? No, because we have ebb and flow problems like every other business that as work comes in and work goes out, we don't want to end up with a surplus of staff. So it's a good way to handle the overflow. It's kind of interesting. Chet is so determined about cleaning up DSA, making it more efficient, that one of the contractors on the outsourcing was a little overzealous, and so he reined them into as an individual and said, if you want more contracts, you're going to have to be a little more realistic in your plan review. And again, that goes to changing the culture at DSA to make us a little more sensitive to what keeps you up at night. So as I mentioned, median bin time is 4.5 weeks, but we're looking at something new, and it's not a secret. We've talked about it openly, and it's a zero bin time. I know that sounds crazy, we're gonna eliminate bin time. Tiananmen Square never happened. Okay, so now how are we gonna do that? Well, look, how do you ship a package, whether it's FedEx or UPS? You take it the day you're going to send it. You don't drop a package off and say, send this in 6 weeks. And that's what's been going on with plan review. You've got packages sitting there that no one can get to. It's insane to have that occur. And so we're going to take a just-in-time approach. We're setting up appointments. We're already doing this at San Diego. Craig Rush, who's very forward-thinking, has already taken the initiative on this one, and it's been extremely successful. If you're from that area, you may be well aware. But what the concept is, and we're writing the procedure, because DSA has two things I've found, forms and procedures. Nothing gets done without a form or a procedure, it seems. But the bottom line is what we'd like to do is take and make an appointment system. So let's just say that you say, I'm going to bring my plans down in 6 weeks. That gives the design professionals team 6 weeks to continue working on the documents before they bring it and drop it off at our doorstep. That's a much more sensible approach to them feeling compelled to drop them off to meet a timeline. Why not just make an appointment? And down in San Diego, it's nothing new. What I was told is Paul Rooney, one of the plan reviewers actually down in LA, has done this in a sort of better rogue way, and it's worked out quite well. And so it's the forward thinking that I think you all would appreciate. It's the kind from the outside that, gee, why weren't you doing it all along, I kind of wonder. But that's the kind of mentality we're imbibing into the DSA staff to try and change that culture of how we look at things. Do you take questions at the end?
Yes,
or?
we do.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Once in a while, we'll just raise our hand, though, and that's okay.
Yeah, if you feel the need, go ahead. When I was at the AIA, I handled pro-practice and regulatory affairs, and one of the things I always told someone when they called me with a question I couldn't answer is, let me find out and get back to you, then we'll both know. So if there's something you ask that I don't know, I will do that, I promise. The electronic plan review is another area we're moving into to be more efficient. We already do it in backcheck. We're setting up all the offices for the EPR. Again, I bring up Paul Rooney in LA. He's completed 20 electronic plan reviews on a pilot program that he's initiated for a total of $44 million in construction costs. And I think that's the kind of mentality that I really appreciate and that we're going to look forward to. Another interesting thing, we have metrics like you couldn't believe. We have forms, we have process, and we have metrics. And these metrics are amazing. What they allow us to do is take a look and drill down into everything we do and find out how it's going. And I used to have a feeling about metrics that you could measure the ocean down to the last teaspoon, but you couldn't control it, because there's this mentality that if you can measure it, you can control it. I'm kind of changing my mind on that where these metrics are concerned, because I'll tell you, you may have heard Chet Whittam bring this up. 84% of DSA's projects are either access, over-the-counter, or under $1 million. But they're all in the hopper with these other projects. It doesn't make sense. So what we're looking at doing is taking a sort of express lane 15 items or less approach to this, and getting these projects out, getting them out, moving them out. And hopefully the electronic plan review will participate in that, and hopefully the zero bin time will participate in that. The increased outsourcing will participate in that. But it is absolutely amazing that that bulk of our work is $1 million or less access or OTCs. And that we learned from the metrics. The other thing we learned from the metrics is not only were we able to measure bin time, so if you consider my 4 fingers, 4 columns, this one is when we take the plans in and bin time. This finger is how long we have it for review. This finger is how long the architectural design team have it for picking up the back check comments, and this finger here is for how long we take to stamp it out and approve it after we get the drawings back. the numbers are absolutely astounding. So if we have a 4.5 week median bin time, why did we only take 6 days to review it? That makes no sense to us. That further strengthens our belief that the appointment system for a 0 bin time is a good approach. The other question we had was 61 days was a median for the design team to have it. Now, I've got strong feelings. I've got 13 years in the practice of architecture, 21 years as their lobbyist. I'm not lobbing a grenade into the room and running out on the architectural profession. There's a story to be told there in that column for the design team and the district. Where are the hangups? Are you not getting them back information? Is there a problem with, oftentimes I've been told, we just sat on it for a while, the district did. There's a number of stories for why that took 61 days as a median. Now, as I said, I'm not lobbing a grenade in the room and running out. We need to figure out what that is, too, why that's occurring. The fourth finger, the stamp out and approval, that's a no-brainer. That goes fairly quick. That's 3 days at the most that I've seen. But here's the other side of that, what I'm thinking. If we were to take with the approval letter to the district and the architect and say, for your project, this was the timeline. This is how long we had it in bin time. This is how long we had it in plan review, how long the design professional team had it, and how long it took to stamp it out and approve it. Those metrics also provide you with information to look back at your project and say, how can we be better as a district? How can we be better as a design team? What can we do to improve this process ourselves? Kind of do a self-assessment, if you will. It's not meant to call anybody out on the carpet, because remember, the rising tide lifts all boats and vice versa, right? So if you're a firm that has excellent communications with your district, if you're a district that has excellent communications internally, that may be what contributes to it. And that's what you really need to do, is take a look inside and say, well, why did this project that went so well, that was similar to this one that didn't go so well, and learn from that. And that's what we're hoping comes of that. It's we're doing it. You should do it. Design teams to do it. Everybody should do it. And it's something that I'm really eager to keep pushing forward on. As I said, we have an amazing staff, by and large. We do have a couple of rogues, but I'm sitting in on interviews now, and I've told the staff, no more bad hires. I would sooner leave a position vacant than hire someone who's suspect. If we have 15 candidates and none of them pan out, we'll put it back out. Unfortunately, the state process for hiring it takes a long time. It's really an interesting thing. But the fact of the matter is that if you end up with a bad hire, you've got a problem. So I'd rather stretch the staff on a position, having them cover it until we get the right person. It just makes management so much easier. To that end, we're hiring a new, it may be announced today, we've hired a new principal fire life safety officer. And I think everybody who's ever worked with this person will be pleased. I borrow from my previous life. After we interviewed all the candidates, I called design firms and asked them, what do you think of this person, to get their feedback? Because I want someone who's a team player. I don't need a regulator in this position. I need a team player, someone who feels they're part of the process. And so I believe we have one. And from there, we're going to trickle on down with that attitude. That's the direction that's being given to this individual. Carry the message. No more rogues. We're cleaning up the place, to be candid. Succession planning concerns me. It keeps me up, as I said, on the project inspectors, on the field engineers. We have a lot of attrition coming up. It's a difficult hiring process. We're looking forward to making sure that we have all the staff on hand that we need, that can do the job, that are forward-thinking, that bring new thoughts to the building. One of the things about hiring from state agency to state agency to state agency is that I notice there's some inbred thinking. These people know where all the bodies are, but they don't realize they shouldn't be killing and burying people. So bringing in new thinking is part of what we'd like to do. Communication side, much like you saw if you participated in 7x7x7, we're going to do a road show. We're going to go to 4 or maybe 5, because my understanding is that the Central Coast often feels neglected and left out. So we're looking at doing a road show which would have something for basically everybody, whether you're a superintendent or facilities manager. It's going to be a come one, come all sort of all-inclusive, modeled after the great job that Cash does with its workshops. And then outreach. I can't tell you how many things are going on at DSA that we don't tell you about. They're on the website, but who cares? Because if no one knows you did it, it really didn't happen as far as I'm concerned. So we're going to increase our outreach. You'll be seeing more from us. You'll be seeing more from Chet in the State Architects Corner. You'll be seeing more proactive approaches to us reaching out to Cash and the other collateral organizations to help us spread the word instead of us just making it static on our website. I do not get that. And a couple of things, I may as well put it out there. On the fee increase, we've gotten past both the Senate and Assembly budget subcommittees. It's on its way. I don't know how you feel about that. I'm sure the room is full of strong personalities who would share with me how they feel about that. And I really can't think of anything else at the moment. Tom?
Let me help you think something. You drafted the fee increase and talked about the detail. Chet and I had communication, I think you were involved in that on Friday, about the detail, what this would mean for $1 million project, what it would mean for 10 million, what it means for 100 million, and what that looks like.
No, I
You
can't.
want to go into it?
No, it's not that I don't want to go into it. I'm not as well informed as you and Chet are, to be candid with you on it, and I would just disseminate bad information, which is not something I want to do. Now, if you can tell the crowd,
I'll wait.
Okay.
I'll have an opportunity.
and I wish I were up to speed on it, but I'm not, to be candid. Yes, sir.
Hey, Kurt Tabarasi, Corona Norco. On the metric with the district holding the plans, was that 61 days from the first approval or from the final approval?
No, that was 61 days after the plan review. And it wasn't the district holding the plans. I don't know who was holding the plans. It's a median number. So after the plans were reviewed and returned, they did not come back.
The final return.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, what we have, a lot of times, I've got access, I'm waiting for structural or fire and life safety.
The final?
There could be weeks and weeks difference between one versus the other.
It is the final. You're right, because FLS, you may not have access on a project. I don't know why you wouldn't, but you might not. You might not have one component. But yes, it is the final. Any more softballs for the new guy?
Yeah, I got one question.
Okay.
You mentioned 8% escalation.
Yes.
Can you clarify, was that your costs or construction cost?
That's construction cost. I'm sorry. No, that's, we don't escalate.
Yeah.
No, that's construction costs.
Over the in an annual, and that's an annual number?
That's an annual number.
Okay. Thanks.
You letting me off easy? All right.
Questions?
Great.
Oh, I have another one. I didn't move.
That's good, because I had a fear there were twins.
A lot of people do, actually. You've been gracious enough to invite Don and I to an inspectors task force meeting that will convene at 9 a.m. on Wednesday.
Correct.
And go through the day, and I will be there. I think Don has already declined because he has to go back to his district and do district work. But can you talk a bit about what the intent is?
That-
You mentioned longevity earlier, you mentioned inspectors, and it just, why is it that DSA has found that it can do this, and what's the intent, what's the end product?
Okay, that I can't answer. So sometime back, DSA wanted to improve the inspector program. And what they realized is they went too far. They made it unnecessarily difficult, not too difficult, unnecessarily difficult. And they did that in many ways. They did that with the examination. They did that with who can do what. And they're realizing that they went too far and it was a mistake. And so they're giving themselves backup room now. And that's what this meeting is about. What we're doing is we're bringing in all the stakeholders and we're going to break them out into 5 groups in the morning from 9 to 1 with a working lunch. And then we're going to convene as a larger group. They've broken out the groups into, as I said, 5 categories, and one would be inspection, one would be criminy, I'm forgetting at the moment. But anyway, it's 5 groups. We've broken them out. Bring them back together after 1 o'clock, have an all-group session, and then at the end do a little bit of blue sky and get them on their way. The idea, though, is how are we going to improve this program to encourage people to come into it? What I've been told so far is that a lot of people who could be part of it are not part of it because it doesn't pay enough. They can make more doing other things for private labs. I don't know where the truth lies in the things I'm being told. That's why I'm interested in seeing the outcomes from the task force. But I think they've got some very bright minds participating, and we're going to get to the bottom of it. And the end goal is, one, to improve the program through the safety of it overall, but those who have access to it, encouraging them to access it.
And who will be there? Who besides inspectors and people like me will be there?
So community college districts, K through 12 school districts have been invited, inspectors, AIA reps, architects, engineers of all discipline, geo, in testing labs, anybody who has a stake in the game with the field engineers. CMs? Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Is there a third one of you, Tom? No triplets? Okay, good. All right. Thank you all. Look forward to coming to see you all again.
There it is. Thank you, Kevin. I think, my impression in listening to Kevin for the first time is he's a good partner for Chet. Chet has lots of vision, lots of ideas on how to improve DSA that we know take time. And I think that what Kurt framed today was he's a good partner and can help get that implemented. So we appreciate that and I look forward to working with you in the future. We've got a representative from OPSC here. I don't think it is Barbara, but he will be up in a second. And I just wanted to frame, we're having a really good conversation with OPSC on a variety of issues that will help implement Prop 51. And in some cases, issues that could impede it, and I want to just remind all our constituents out there, that our goals are the same. We set these out at the CASH conference, and the idea that we want, to process all applications, the unfunded list and the acknowledged list in 2017. While that seems daunting, that's still what should happen and should achieve what the voters of California voted on. We'd also like to move to monthly apportionments. That's still our goal, to have this program work the way it should and have dollars going out so we're not spiking construction costs at different times of the year. That's still the goal we want to achieve. So I appreciate OPSC's work, appreciate them being here to talk more about what's going on day to day and some big things we're working on together to get these dollars out to our constituents. So they're all yours.
Good morning. Good morning. Michael Watanabe with OPSC. Barbara couldn't make it today. Last minute scheduling conflicts. You got me. Before I get to the board agenda, just a reminder, we do have a current filing round open for the Charter School Facilities Program. I believe that filing round closes at the beginning of June. If you're helping school districts out, a reminder, they have a notice to their local school districts 30 days in advance that they are intending to file an application, so that would put you at early May. On our website, if you haven't got the email blast, I believe we have 2 workshops this week. I think one's down in LA and one's up here. If you want to RSVP for that, Aaron Cooning is the one to RSVP to. We do about a 2-hour presentation. We walk you through the entire application process, every little box, everything you need to do for the forms, how to get that app in, how the program works for conversion, and then generally after that we have a couple hours where we can do one-on-one sessions with you. So you can coordinate that through Erin. She'll take your name and contact information, and she'll meet with you. Tonight's board meeting, we're in room 113 at the Capitol at 4 p.m. It is a smaller room, so you might want to get there early. Going through the consent agenda tonight, we are doing priority funding apportionments for some cash that made available to us last month. We're giving $63 million out for 17 projects in 13 school districts. You should have been contacted already by one of my staff. If not, you will be this week. The fund release requests for those are due July 24th by close of business. Just a quick comment on our ERP item this month. There is a typo on the cover for the savings item. We thought, the item says there's 134 projects with savings. There's actually only about 55. We are reallocating a lot of that cash at tonight's meeting for 11 applications for $6 million. We still have a little bit of ERP authority that we're giving out. That'll continue to go through probably through the summer. There is a big due date for a lot of ERP projects in May, so we'll probably get more savings that we'll continue to give out. So Adrian from our office will be reaching out to school districts and continue processing them. We're just going to keep going down the list until it's all out and stays out. The action items. So again, I am filling in for Barbara. I'm just the messenger today. I've been heavily involved. If you haven't heard, our office is switching over to Fiscal, as mentioned in our EO statement. It's the state's financial information system. So I've been heavily involved in program and development for our office and getting us live. We go live July 1st, as mentioned in the EO statement. We have a mid-June cutoff to the state controller's office. So these priority funding apportionments, if we don't get your fund release by, say, about middle of May, you probably won't get your cash till about July 1st. And then July 1st, we switch over to Fiscal. If everything goes perfectly, should be a relatively seamless process, but we're crossing our fingers. So that's been a heavy project for our office and for me for the last year now, at least. So I wasn't heavily involved in writing these items. I have seen them, I've gone through them, but a lot of your comments probably should say for the board. But for those of you who haven't read the items, I'll run through them really quickly with you. So the first item is the grant agreements. If you'll recall, back in the fall last year, we presented OSA's findings on our program in Prop 1D. A lot of those findings, or pretty much all of them, we deferred until we found out what happened with Proposition 51. With the passage of the proposition in January, we represented OSA's findings, their recommendations, and our solutions for those. At the January board, the board directed us to present grant agreements and regulations that would conform to that for a following meeting, and that's what this item is doing. So the item, if you haven't read it, the OSA called out expenditure audits and not performing on-site, costs that were questionable that should possibly be returned to the program. More accountability in the program is one of the things they called about. Grant agreements, more oversight. A lot of this the governor is addressing in the trailer bill language, so a lot of your comments and concerns that we've seen for those are more appropriate for that venue. These grant agreements, if you've seen them, they do appear overwhelming. They're about 90 pages as a whole, but that's because it's a template. When you distill all the stuff down that's just applicable to your project, it should be about 30 or less, somewhere around there is what we're looking at. We're not making any changes to statute. We are restating a lot of information that's already been existing. There are a few policy changes in there. You've probably seen eliminating a lot of those IT purchases, making them not eligible anymore for purchase and part of the program. We've seen the concerns, we've heard them. That's how it's proposed right now, so those comments can certainly be addressed at the board. The grant agreements would apply to all new projects going forward and anyone that's going to be receiving an apportionment in the future. They will not apply to the projects that are being apportioned tonight, but we have another item going to this board that would take everybody on the true unfunded list and convert them to unfunded approvals where they actually get bond authority. They would be applicable to those. So depending on where you're on, which list you're on, they would apply to you. They would also apply to all acknowledged list projects, that $2 billion we have in the workload that haven't gotten their unfunded approval and their bond authority to apply to them. So for the true unfunded list, what we envisioned, if the board approves your conversion tonight, over the course of the summer after the final regs are approved. Our office would be in contact with you. We'd be sending you the grant agreement that would match your project stats for signature and come back. If you participate in the priority funding in May, you would need to return those before you can get an apportionment later this fall. And the acknowledged list projects we envision as we process the applications, we'd be working with you on the grant agreement on that part. Now, yeah.
Just going back to the true unfunded list, so the intent is that every project would have its own agreement. So if a district has 10 projects, there's 10 agreements, correct?
Correct. The question was, would that, if the district has 10 projects, would you need 10 agreements? Yes, because it'd be case by case. What you'll see on the first couple pages of the grant agreement is we put your project-specific information on there. Project number, how much state funding you're agreeing to. These would match the funding application that you finally submit to our office. You know, we go back and forth. We get to the final numbers to what we're funding. Your grant agreement will match all that. So your grant agreement won't necessarily come in with your 5004. We'd work with you to get all the details hammered out by then.
So in order to be expeditious, it would seem to me that you would probably begin to produce those agreements after the board takes action. Is that accurate? You start working on them now so they're ready by the bond sale?
No, I don't think you need to at all. The question is, should you be working on your grant agreements now? No.
No, I mean you.
Oh, us. Well, yeah, okay, so in the item as presented, it's just a Word document. We will create a template that can be used. But I think what we're kind of envisioning is most of the work is actually on OPSC's side. We will slim it down to what you need and then send it to you for signature. You know, the grant agreements as they have, we have sections for CT, we have sections for charter, we have sections for new construction. You don't need all that in your grant agreement. So we will distill down just for your project. For your new construction, we will delete all the stuff that doesn't apply to your project. Make sense? So those are the grant agreements. There is trailer bill language out there. If anything changes in the trailer bill language, we will update the grant agreements accordingly. The intent is to file these on an emergency basis. So ideally, sometime later this week, we'll get the 5-day notice out and move them along so they're in effect by mid-May, and get them out there so that people can see the final versions. The next item in action is the true unfunded list item. So we have 129 apps worth about $400 million. That have been sitting on the true unfunded list since 2012. They don't have any bond authority tied to them, but we fully process them. We are recommending to the board give them bond authority at tonight's meeting. That would make you eligible for priority funding the second Wednesday in May. That would also mean you're subject to non-participation occurrences right away too. So if your districts are on that list, they should have already received call last week and continuing this week to give them a heads up that, hey, you know, you new staff turnover, you might not realize it 4 years ago, 5 years ago, you put a project on this list and asked for authority. You're going to get it at tonight's meeting. So you'll want to start moving forward and remind them of the deadlines for those. There are 9 school districts, I believe, on there that had prior financial hardship funding requests on their project. That hasn't changed, but because they've been on there for more than 6 months, we will need to do a re-review. Our office, over the course of the summer and before leading into potentially fall apportionments, we'll reach out to you a little bit closer so that we don't have to do it again. But go through your financials, double check all the numbers, make sure nothing changes before we plug you in theory, in the fall. There are 13 projects that we believe have expired DSA approvals. You will need to refresh those approvals before we give you apportionment. We're recommending the board plug you in, but until we verify the updated approvals, can't get an actual apportionment. But we're not recommending you lose authority or anything like that at this time. The current trailer bill language out there has a new audit process, you're probably a lot aware, that's done by local education agencies. If that is approved, that would apply to these projects as well.
What is the change about?
The change is having more of the oversight and review of the, what is the change in the audit process for the trailer bill language? So what the governor's proposed is that a lot of the closeout functions that OPSC does now, verifying your contracts, did your expenditures go towards the project that you applied for, moving towards your local auditors. When you do your annual financial audits for all your bond oversight or what have you, just in the district in general, you would roll this component into that annual audit. So our office would be working with state controllers to update their audit guide for what our requirements that we would need them to check for, or what the board would need them to check for. So anybody being apportioned later this fall, when these regs and in theory the trailer bill language is in effect, that audit process would apply to these projects as well. So that's just kind of a heads up. And then the last item is for the applications received beyond bond authority list. We have about almost 800 applications for about just short of $4 billion. If you recall, this list was created by the board 5 years ago now. We had a series of subcommittee meetings, implementation committee meetings to discuss what to do when we ran out of bond authority. There's a strong desire by the subcommittee and IMP to continue a list, fully process the applications to identify future need. At the full board meeting, though, they didn't want us to process. They wanted to have the program discussion, so they elected to create this acknowledged list where OPAC would make sure we had a complete application, receive it, put it on a list, and move forward. In our staff analysis, you'll see a few concerns that the board will take into consideration as they decide what to do with this list. What happens about the school districts didn't apply, what to do with the eligibility. A lot of these applications were on the list back in 2012. Do they need the projects anymore? So these are all discussions the board will have to have. There are 3 options in the board item. First are wing that we continue to process the applications in date order received. We have this list. We know the dates received for all of them. We just start going down them and start working on them. In option 1, though, we do have the board consider whether to require new construction eligibility updates. For monitors, and that what that means is you refresh your eligibility, your seabeds, everything to make sure your future need is still there for those projects. Modernization, if you had new buildings coming of age, you'd have to reapply and resubmit if you wanted more eligibility, but you could process those as they were. The second option, process in date order, use the eligibility at time. We take all the eligibility, whatever your date of the submittal, whatever you're locked in it, and just process it that way and move down the list. And then the third option is to return all the applications. People resubmit them, current eligibility, current state approvals, brand new, get in line. And obviously there are challenges with that. We assume there'd be a huge flood. We point out the board that, on any given day we can get hundreds of applications. They're going to need more tiebreakers than just a receive date. So there are those 3 options out there. We're not recommending anything. So the board will have to have that discussion too as well. So those are the 3 items in a nutshell.
Is OPSC on looking at the acknowledged list of the options here, are they looking at the difference between projects that are already completed and projects that aren't completed in making those 3 options? Because if a project's completed, why would you go back and redo your eligibility?
So the question was, is OPC looking at projects whether they're completed or not completed when they're considering the processing? In terms of the option, we just point out the issue exists. The regulations and statutes we process in date order received, though. So whether it's completed or not, for OPSC purposes, wouldn't make a decision. But the board will have to consider that in terms of which option do they choose. Yes. Any other questions on those items? I think that's it from OPSC. Thank you.
Michael. Thank you to OPSC. I think on that last acknowledged list, it'll be really important, and I'm sure Cash's position will be that, the acknowledged list needs to be honored like the voters voted for, that it adheres to the current statute. And that's the discussion we'll have to have with OPSC, but obviously that's going to be the position of Cash and all our constituents out there. California Department of Education, Mr. Fred Yeager is here to give us a report on the goings-on with CDE.
Thanks, Don. Couple things related to some of the various lists of acknowledged and bond authority. Take a look at your CDE letters. Make sure they're within that either 2 or 5 year approval date. There are a number on whatever that first list is, Michael. Is that the true unfunded? True unfunded. That has both lapsed DSA and/or CDE approvals. So take a look at yours, make sure they're within that approvable range. Let's see, what else is going on? Couple of the water bills we've been talking about for over the last several months, of the 9.5 million for the testing and the water filling stations. Water Resource or State Water Board will have a public hearing on the draft funding guidelines on May 16th at the EPA building just over there. They are also video casting it, so you can check out their webpage for the information on that. So this is the $9.5 million provided under SB 828. And then the other water bill, or not bill, is your local water agency providing testing of up to 5 faucets on your campus. So that is a discussion that the district has to initiate with their water agency. So take a look at the State Water Board's webpage on that for details on how that lays out. There are timeframes from once you contact your provider where they have to schedule an appointment, do the testing within a specified time. So take a look at that. Has anyone done that yet? Contacted and got their results back? Oh, no, results aren't back yet, but they've done. How long did Rob, did that take on the? And you have like several water.
It literally varies from one jurisdiction to the next, just depending on how large and how sophisticated they are. But the larger, more proactive, have been really quick to respond.
Okay.
They're going to do their testing this summer.
All right. Cool. All right. Let's see what else we got. We are continuing to take employment exam applications for the exam process in the state to get on a list for hiring of our field rep, our consultant position. So we've been extending that deadline in the hopes of increasing the number of applicants that we can look at. So June 6th is the current date, so take a look on our webpage. So as I explained before, the state process is 2 steps. Do the exam, and then we create a list. So this is not the hiring part of it. This is creating the list. And then from there, we would go in and make sure all the minimum qualifications and the like are met, and then do hiring interviews from there. So let's see. Field rep exams. Title V. We have last week wrapped up the last of our listening sessions. We had that was in Riverside, where we had a number of districts and other government agencies, Department of Public Health, conservation agencies. So we are hoping to get all the comments that will guide our drafting of regulations, so by the end of this week. Doesn't mean that you can't submit us anything after that, but these are the ideas that we should look at in crafting the regulations. Once a formal set of proposed regulations are crafted, they'll go to the State Board of Education, who will open the administrative process where you can look at the actual proposed language and submit formal comments. All right.
Brad, two things. So the final date is Friday?
I hate to use the word final date, but a date where sort of just a cutoff. So, okay, we got this pool of comments, so we can start sifting through them and formulating concepts.
The second is, what kernels of wisdom did you gather from the meetings that you had?
Repeat the question. That's a great question.
Tom asked if I have any wisdom, I think is what he said. Tom asked, if there was a way to summarize the kernels of wisdom that we have received. So I've been going through and keeping a list, and then we've had various conversations with Cash and the districts over the years anyway. I would categorize broadly, and we had these discussions in our listening sessions, that our conversations with other state agencies, so Office of Planning and Research, the CEQA people, Health in All Policy Areas, which is sort of an umbrella group of a lot of state agencies, Health, Caltrans on the walkability. They have an interest in seeing increased, and maybe that's not the right word, increased collaboration between the states and the locals in community planning, so that the school sites are supportive of the state's efforts in reducing greenhouse gases. So is it walkable, joint use, all those things, many of which are common in a district's planning process. There was a large set of input from what you could call the environmental justice advocates, who have concerns probably more over existing school sites, as Title V looks at the criteria for placing a new school site, and over time, land uses around it change it. A lot of environmental justice views on that now there's oil refineries or plating plants nearby impacting existing sites. And then there was a very large input from the school districts and associated industries on the need for flexibility within Title V, recognizing that there's 1,000 districts, 10,000 schools, interacting with numerous water districts, numerous cities and counties, that a set of regulations has to recognize the inherent need to respond differently in different places and different ed programs. So it's all the wisdom I have, Tom.
Anything about a common thing called the classroom? Do you have any feedback on that?
In the general sense of the need for flexibility, I think of what is the understanding of a classroom or an educational space. And then that sort of then dovetails right into, well, what can I get funded for, which is outside of Title V. I think Title V has proven to be extremely receptive over the course of the SFP in allowing districts to design collaborative spaces, and there's lots of examples of that. Some of the concern may be more on the other side as to what is the funding, but Title V has allowed collaborative space, project-based learning spaces, maker spaces. So, anything else on anything about the Giants being in last place? Anything like that? Nothing like that? Gotta get my shot while I can.
Got to go forward. Now, regulatory issues. He just walked in the door. Perfect timing. Ian Padilla and Dr. Tom Duffy from CASH are both going to speak to these.
All right, so slow down.
You got it. We're waiting. It's okay.
I needed to pick up some water. Ian, would you want to lead off?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Come over here. About 15 minutes, guys.
Okay. Good morning, and appreciate everybody being here on sort of a different day for a state allocation board. Waking up on a Monday morning and thinking I have to, I have the great pleasure of having a meeting with the CASH board and then the CASH membership and then the allocation board on a Monday. It means the rest of the week is going to be pretty simple, hopefully. Let me talk to you about the matter that Michael was referring to. And can everybody hear me? Can you hear me in the back of the room, Alex? The matter of having an agreement and to have an audit at the end of a project isn't a matter of concern to CASH. The matter of concern to CASH is what is the intent and what is the substance of the agreement and what is the intent and the substance of the audit at the end. So we are on record with a letter from our chair to the State Allocation Board that we believe agreeing to how we spend state bond funds is not a bad thing if there's recognition that the program has elements to it that have been in place for quite some time and are substantial. We are and we think that provides what I'd refer to as a template. And Michael, I think you used that word. Having a template to help guide both districts in spending and state agents in looking at that spending is not a bad thing, knowing up front. At the back end, having an audit is not something that we are concerned about. We believe in audits. All of us spending public money know that we're accountable to the public, we're accountable to each other, we're accountable to state agencies and the elected. And if there's anything that can get a superintendent in trouble, it's not a curriculum issue. It's not an issue of whether or not they have enough seats in the gym, unless they have a bond measure. It's, did they misspend public money? And so we're on record as saying we believe in audits. The question really is, what about this agreement and what is intended with the audit? So let me just step back a second and indicate to you that we understood that there was to be a proposal of an audit agreement when we came into the new year in 2017. Our chair at the time, Jenny Hanna, asked Lisa Silverman if there could be a stakeholders meeting to be able to grapple with this issue. What will this mean? What will be in it? And Lisa graciously agreed, and there was a plan for a stakeholders meeting that was delayed. Our understanding was there were a number of others that at the state level that were concerned about this. We eventually had this meeting. It was a couple of weeks ago, and some of you in the room were there, and we were able to go through some pieces of as Michael referred to it, as kind of a lengthy document, 77 pages, and the intent is to include all the programs in this. But there were a number of concerns that were expressed. Darren, you were there. You expressed concern about this being backward-looking, that if indeed you had a project that was on the true unfunded list or on the acknowledged list, and you had built the project, spent money, then you're having to sign an agreement that says you will follow this, what's in this agreement, and yet your project would have been built potentially or under construction, you would have had a contract signed. One of the things, if I may, Darren brought up that was important to his district was that this agreement identifies that you may not buy computers for students, and as opposed to computers that would, say, run an HVAC system or some kind of energy system. And Darren basically said, well, does that mean that I have to, if I sign this agreement, I have to go back and shuffle dollars back and pay back state dollars? And there was not really an answer to that, but I think the assumed answer was, yeah, you'd probably have to do something like that. I use that as an example, and I'm not going to go into detail on others, but we have expressed concern, and our chair has expressed concern in a letter to the allocation board about this document, and basically have said, let's defer action on it so that we can gather school people, school practitioners together with auditors and some state agents and really come to an agreement about what it is that we are going to have in this document. And let me just speak to the back end. So this agreement then is to be looked at in the context of, did you spend dollars according to that agreement? And that's the audit function. What's being proposed, as Michael identified, is that no longer would OPSC do these audits. The audits would be done at the local level by your local independent auditor. And I stressed independent auditor in that you hire the auditors, but you do not direct their work. They have to follow certain procedures, and they are able to do work in California as long as they perform those functions and procedures according to standards. And so their work is something we respect. In our conversations with the auditors, we have, and this came through largely through Ted Rossi's help, trying to connect up with several practicing auditors, they have expressed concern because they've said, are we supposed to look at things the way that OPSC looks at things? In fact, is there going to be a second audit by OPSC of our work? A number of questions. And the question of, is there to be an audit of line by line by line of expenditures in the future, the way that OPSC has done this in the past, or is currently doing? And some of those answers are still unanswered, but at least they have been asked. Our concern about the audit is that our auditors be able to do this work, and they have expressed concern as to even having the knowledge base to be able to do it. So what we've asked, and the cash board had asked if Irena Ortega could meet with the board today. And Irena graciously came in and met with the board for about an hour, and we talked about these issues. I think she was informed of concerns that individual school district practitioners and others have, and I think we heard from her what the concerns of the state are. But what you'll see this afternoon is the allocation board, as Michael identified, asking, or the staff of OPSC asking the allocation board to adopt this agreement and to move forward on the projects on the various lists. We see them as being intertwined. We've said that we're on record, and I think Don said this earlier, that the agreement should commence prospectively for any contract for construction that would be signed by a district, not retroactively. We think that that is something that will create a number of issues for districts in the allocation board. And our mantra is you take solutions to the board, you don't take problems. Taking something like this to the board is, I think, taking problems, because we do not know the kinds of things that bright people like Darren would ask, does this apply to me, and do I have to make some kind of a change? And I won't go further other than to say that we believe that the two lists, the true unfunded list, the acknowledged list, should be funded, and one is proposed to be funded as of action today. We think both should be treated the same, and that for any contract that has not, or that has been signed, that this agreement would not be applicable, but that for some future contract. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions if anybody has questions. And Don, did I leave anything out of that? Did I miss any points? Any questions or comments about any of that?
I have a question on whether or not you believe that it's within their authority under the initiative language to do the grant agreement.
What Corinne has said is, do we believe, or do I believe, that the state has the authority to cause districts to sign this agreement based upon statutes and regulations that exist because of the way we drafted Prop 51, correct?
January 15th, 2000.
January 2015. I think how it's done, what we, and this is actually in Don's letter, it's referenced there. We believe that the board has had a practice of recognizing that districts sign contracts and then saying, you signed a contract, we know you've obligated yourself, and you have this project waiting for these funds. So you signed the contract, we'll give you the dollars. We believe that is the accurate way to have this agreement commence. If indeed the state is concerned about Darren spending money on computers or you advising a client to spend money on band uniforms or the like, we believe that it could be precisely identified in some kind of an agreement, and that agreement is something you say, I know that you don't want me to spend money on these, or that these are acceptable, and I sign this as a condition of getting my fund release, very much like as a condition of getting a fund release in the past, we've said we're shovel ready and we're going to sign a contract in 90 days. So we think if it's done that way, it does meet.
Isolated clarification.
Yes. And to answer your question further, we have concerns that what's there and the way it's drafted does basically come into conflict with the way we wrote Prop 51. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Let me shift gears, if I can, to DSA. The state architect has worked very closely with us over the last several years on a number of issues, and has identified several times for us that DSA was retrieving dollars that had been borrowed by the state under the Schwarzenegger administration when the state was in fiscal dire straits. And he said, we're getting those dollars back, and once they're back, they're going to be gone, and we are going to be in fiscal need ourselves. So we need an increase in our fee. And so a few weeks ago, we met, it was maybe 2 months ago, we met and he talked about the no bin time and how this would work, and as you've heard earlier from Kurt Kuchnick. And he did talk about the fact that they have a budget trailer bill that would follow the budget process that would have a fee increase for DSA. DSA's fees are in statute. They cannot increase their structural review fee without a statutory change. So I asked if he could prepare a document to share with us so that, and we'll send that out to our membership, but I received this on Friday, to identify what this fee increase would mean. And so I'm going to list out for you, and you may have some questions about this. We had our regional training course series down in Bakersfield on Friday, the second of the three, and this was on finance. And at the end, they asked me to give an update on implementation and the like of Prop 51, and I shared that. But I shared this with them and had some interesting reactions, Kurt, that you may be interested to hear. So, and maybe there'll be some reactions today. So I asked for a comparison of $1 million, $10 million, and $100 million under the current fee and under what is proposed. So and basically the current, the filing fee for project applications will increase, if this were to become law, from 0.7% to 1.25% of the first $1 million. And as you look at this calculation, it diminishes as it goes up, but of course it's going to be going up for millions and millions of dollars. So for the minimum fee for a $1 million project, the application cost would be $12,500 under the proposed fee. The current fee is $7,000. So we're looking at a $5,500 increase for that. For a $10 million project, the application will be $102,500. The current fee for that same value of project is $61,000. For a $100 million project, the application fee would be $1,002,500, and the current project fee would be $601,000. So John's grimacing over here. So John is an architect, HMC and lead, and he's grimacing at those dollar amounts. You wouldn't be paying those, John, but the district would be. And I guess your grimace is probably because when you estimate the cost of a project, you include all the fees, and you'd have to tell the district what those would be. So we will send this out so that you know what is being proposed here. Again, DSA cannot increase their fee without a change in statute. DSA has, in the past, informed us that they wanted to increase the access compliance fee, and that was done, and we didn't oppose that. They also broke out the fire and life safety review fee from the structural fee, and that was done. About a dozen years ago, DSA ceased reviewing the California Geologic Survey work together with California Geologic Survey, and districts had to assume that cost. So there has been some changes in what DSA has asked districts to shoulder over the past 12 years or so. This looks like a substantial increase, and Kurt, we'll have some dialogues with the state architect about that. But I greatly appreciated him doing this. This came as a result of some work we did at the end of last week. Questions, comments? And Kurt, this would go into effect, because it's a trailer bill, when the budget is adopted and signed, which means by July 1, the new fees would ensue. Okay?
I don't mean to digress.
Yeah.
But on the grant agreement today.
Yes.
And I don't know if this might not even be a question for you, maybe Michael can help. If and when there's a penalty determined, whether or not the district concurs with that penalty with OPSC and there's a payment plan established, the payment comes from the Educational Protection Act account, which is tied directly to Prop 30, if I understand it right. Do you know why that determination was made? And part of the concern, and I think Ted Rossi captured this in the letter he submitted to the board, if we need to pay back the penalty, we prefer to do it with capital dollars so it doesn't come out of our general fund.
So what Rob has asked is, I think, why is it that the agreement proposes that if indeed a district is found to have owed money on a project, so that they spent money they shouldn't have, and the state says, give us that money back, so it's not savings, that the state would basically, to use the term that's used in the workplace, garnish the Prop 98 apportionments that happen on a pretty much a monthly basis to school districts over the course of a year, to garnish those wages, those revenues, rather than having the district pay back whatever it was deemed it owed by its bond funds. So why did they do it that way? I don't know. We believe that it's conflicted with statute in Chapter 12.5, because Chapter 12.5 has a provision that identifies that if a district does owe state money, it may pay it back through a capital account, and that's typically today would be local bond dollars. The only reason, and I've asked that question directly, why is this? And there really hasn't been an answer, other than our belief that it gives the state the ability to say, we disagree, and even though you're in disagreement, we need the money, so we're going to capture it back. We can potentially adjudicate this later through some other means, through the audit review that will be done. And remember, what we're told, OPSC would not be doing these audits. The audits are going to be done at the local level. If there's some exception, then there's an audit appeals panel that is set up for regular audits that exist today, and that this would be the process that would be used. Does that help?
And that appeal would be before the garnishment or after?
I believe that the appeal would be at the state's, what the state would choose to do. It's their discretion.
OPSC doesn't get involved at all. You want to be disagreeing with OPSC, you go through your local auditor, work things out. If you can't reach agreement, then you go through the education appeals panel. Until they tell us that you owe us money, we don't even get involved yet.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of a cut hard and fast, oops, yep, we made a mistake, we owe you $100,000. To think that would come out of my EPA, as opposed to me saying, hey, I have a capital facility budget here, I'd like to just give it to you now, because I can't refund my general fund with capital resources.
Yeah, and that's been said. So as Rob's identified, so if the general purpose revenue the district receives, its general fund revenues are dinged, he cannot take bond money and replenish those. He can't spend bond money on a general fund purpose. That's not legal for him to do. So we've identified this as a problem. We've said this is something that shouldn't be in place. That districts have had issues in the past, and districts sometimes, it's a big number, and they have an agreed upon plan to pay back over a period of years.
That's currently in practice.
Yes, it is.
It is in practice now.
No, not the dinging. No, no. But what? So Corinne said, is it currently in practice? The state does have the ability to if there is some issue with the district, to withhold payments of their general purpose revenue, basically their Prop 98 dollars.
Is this in conflict with Prop 51?
And Corinne said, is this in conflict with Prop 51? We believe it's in conflict with the existing statute, so it would be in conflict with Prop 51. That you would have the ability to say, I'm going to pay you back over time, because that's in statute, with my capital dollars.
Tom, this has obviously been a big issue for us as well, because it's how do I move that money over there? $100,000, $150,000, I don't know what it is. Why am I going to take a general fund hit for this and I can't get the bond funds over there? And it's not OPSC, this is in the trailer bill, and they've always had the ability to do this. They've always given us the opportunity to pay with capital funds first. I mean, obviously, if you're not paying, then they got to recoup the funds somehow. They get to do that. So I did run into Jeff Bell from Department of Finance, and I kind of hammered him on this a little bit as well. So he says they're looking at it, but I haven't seen any revisions to trade.
But we believe it's in conflict with your ability to make a decision at the local level because of what the statute identifies. So as we talked about, there are a number of issues here. What Don has asked that the board do in a formal letter to the board is to defer action on this agreement item and to convene a small group of practitioners that could include some of you that are school folks and audit professionals, and expecting that there would be OPSC and DOF professionals as well. So we'll find out what the board does this afternoon, which is one of the reasons you came up here today. Anything else? Is there anything else you wanted me to address, Don?
Nope, we're a little late, apologize, but we'll keep
Okay.
going through it. We'll go through it quickly.
Ian, here you go. Thank you very much.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I know that we're actually past time, so I'm going to be very brief. At 12:30, the Cash Legislative Advisory Committee is going to meet, 1303 J Street. And so if you would like to hear or participate in some of these discussions about legislation, please come to that. The other good piece of that is that these issues, very important issues for Cash that we're talking about right now, we're going to have a discussion of those in the LAC as well. And then, of course, go through some of the bills that Cash has been chasing around. So thank you very much.
Okay, the first meeting I oversaw finished 15 minutes early, so it's cumulative. So we're okay, all right? Julie Strauss, Julie Arthur, our vice chair in Palm Springs Unified, is here to talk about the annual conference. Apologize for that. It's my 50. Yeah, she was next.
She thought she was going to have to come up and do this. Good afternoon, everyone. I will do my best to make this very quickly. We are not having an annual Planning Conference Committee meeting this afternoon. Our next one will be May 24th. Right now, the committee is still soliciting Strand co-chairs and Strand committee members. The Strands are, of course, ultimately responsible for selecting the topics and moderators for next year's conference. So if you know someone who'd like to be a member, who'd like to join the Planning Committee, please encourage them to come, or you come yourselves. Right now, the call for workshop and roundtable proposals has been sent to the membership. Our deadline on that is Friday, May 26th. And right now, the trade show, just a quick update on that, will be expanding into Exhibit Hall A and B next year. We've received applications for 128 booths during the early part of the registration period. Approximately 56% of the show is already sold. The exhibitor prospectus will be available by the end of May, and we'll open exhibitor registration to the vendors at that time. And that's just a quick update right now on that. So was that quick enough, Don?
That was perfect.
Okay, we'll see everyone in May.
Okay. Okay, Anna Ferrara from the School Energy Coalition, and she's just going to introduce our next speaker, which will be Dave Walrath regarding CSF.
Okay. I'm going to introduce Dave?
Yeah.
Okay.
I already did.
Okay. I was going to say, didn't you just do that? Okay. Energy, Proposition 39. We were the lead presenter with President Pro Tem Kevin DeLeon on SB 518. That bill passed out of committee on a bipartisan vote. We had 2 Republicans join us, 10-1. So it extends the encumbrance date to 12/31/18. It allocates the money left on the table after that encumbrance date, and then removes the sunset from the Clean Energy Jobs Creation Fund going forward. So that's been our top priority, and that one is out of the first committee. It'll then go to appropriations and then over to the other House of Origin, opposite House of Origin. One other bill I wanted to tell you about, because there was some discussion about it last time, is this electric vehicle charging station bill. We have been in a lot of discussions with the member's office on this. It is an opt-in program now. It is, we've clarified that it's a program that schools can participate in. We have asked for amendments that will allow schools to be the ultimate authority on access to campus. And we've asked that school buses perhaps be added. So we'll see where the amendments go on that one, and that should be up in the next week or two. And then the rest of the bills, AB 304, intervenor compensation, got pulled last week. It may become a 2-year bill. AB 356 Skinner, I just came back from Energy Data, is still, it was in it was on a hold right now for more votes, and 2 bills on energy storage. And if you want to know more about that, feel free to contact me. We'll be also having forums here in Sacramento on the 23rd of May and in San Diego on May 18th if you want to hear more about the details in our strategy going forward. Thank you. And Dave Walrath, you may come up now to tell us about federal, no, he's not
No.
here? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah, Dave Walrath was called away, probably working on Prop 51 implementation. So we're going to go ahead and, before we adjourn, though, I just want to say that, I think what is really important here is that we all remember is that the voters voted, almost 7 months ago, right, to implement Prop 51. And what we need to remember is that what's going on right now is that those dollars can't get out to our kids, to our teachers, to our schools, what they were intended to do. And so it's important work. It's really important work what we're doing right now. And like I've reminded you before, school district officials and design teams for your school districts, know your number. Know what's at stake for your district, for your kids, for your teachers, every day that Prop 51 implementation doesn't get done, right? I think it's going to be important for our agencies and our legislatures and our governor to know that number and how it affects kids, students, and communities in California. We're adjourned. Thank you.